Well, hello, creatives, community, and kind folks. Welcome to RPG with DBJ. I am your host, DBJ. As you can see, the intros are changing quite a bit. Just trying new things out. Anyway, I thought we would get into something quite controversial today, and of course, we're going this concept of Hasbro through Wizards of the Coast using Dungeons and Dragons and having a new open gaming license, and it's a whole big thing. And one of the provisions in it, I think it probably deserves about 3 weeks time. We're going to try to condense it down to about an hour, and that is the idea that um, unsavory, offensive, non-inclusive information. Publications that aren't diverse, that do not align with Wizards of the Coast, can be canceled immediately. Good morning there. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Um, yes, welcome there, kind folks and creatives and community. Um, Material that is deemed by Hasbro as being offensive can be not only removed, but um, ma- uh, that individual will be removed from being able to produce materials for Wizards of the Coast, and essentially their products and their ability to produce those products will be, uh, according to the language of the contract, that or the OGL will be canceled. It'll just be removed, and you won't be able to produce any more materials. And uh, I thought I thought we could have a more nuanced conversation about the product liability and offensiveness and this growing anti wokeism that is permutating nearly everything, especially in the tabletop RPG community, and get this from one person of millions, tens of millions of people here in the United States that's part of the RPG community, and get my opinion on a thing. I'm not a monolith. I don't represent everyone of color, but I think it behooves us not to at least try to find some other opinions or look at things from a different way. And I'm pretty sure a lot of people are not going to like my response to this, including Hasbro. They're not going to like my response to this either. So I thought we would have a conversation about that. It does things with Shadow's like, I've been up all night. I'm a person of a certain age. I can't do without sleep. Can't do that. Can't do that. All right. So today, let's see if I can call up the actual provision. That's going to be a little bit difficult. All right. Let's not do that. So w- it- when we have these kind of conversations, yeah. Oh man, 50 in a month. Sheesh. Yeah, that to me sounds like like a problem. Unless you're getting a lot done. But be careful. Your mind needs to. Your mind is a powerful thing, man, and don't let it go to waste. Don't start destroy those brain cells with lack of sleep. You need that recovery. Get that long rest in. Enough short rest is fine, but you need that long rest in. Pun intended. All right, so um, when we have a discussion, we have to look at both sides, and I think it is very easy to today for people to like place their flag in a hill and go, "I'm right, you're wrong, f you," right? And that's a pretty common thing. People feel outraged. I think in today's world, there's this erroneous thought that people's emotions need to have a physical presence in the world instead of actually just feeling emotions and then moving on with your life. and not having to intrude those emotions on other people's um, physical and social well-being. It's just really weird. Nocturnal. Okay, okay. All right. I'll give that to you, D. I'll give that to you. So, as people know, every company needs to have some kind of protection for their brand, and and every company has this protection. The one I'm going to bring up, which is going to be, I think those of us that live in the United States are going to go like, huh? But I'm going to use this as an example for this particular reason. So, professional sports, especially the NFL, and most companies where you sign a contract when you work for them have a clause, a morality clause. And essentially, the morality clause is existent. They've written it in this new OGL draft that they are calling a playtest. But anyway, so a morality clause is essentially, I'm a government worker. I'm a letter carrier. I carry mail when I leave these live streams. I put my uniform on and I head to work and I carry mail. And if you are a government worker, when you are hired, I mean, they make you do the proverbial hand in the air, raise your right hand and say a thing that you have a morality clause. And that morality clause means essentially that you promise that you will lead uh, a life that does not reflect badly on the brand. And if you have ever seen American movies, you'll actually notice that most movies don't have the Postal Service in it. And that's because the Postal Service doesn't want and cannot allow private individuals to use the brand of the Postal Service, a government institution. Um, yeah, yeah, Death's Angel, not Dead Man. It's the I see you, Dead Man. It's the idea that if I lead my life in a particular manner, even if I'm off the clock, that I can cast, my job in an unfavorable light. And so in a movie, since they can't tell, if a movie's like, hey, I have a mailman in my movie, they they're going to just say no because they can't control the content of the movie, and then therefore they don't know. Now the military has a pretty good relationship with movies, especially if they promise to cast the military in a positive light, and so then they're allowed to use um, military equipment and badging and things of that nature. Yeah, yeah, Dead Man's like, this isn't Warhammer fantasy battles. Reality doesn't have manifestations of emotions. Yeah. Um, so in our world today, when we have, and I'm going to get to the point, when we have fears and aggression and desires and things like that, as an emotion, we feel that we have the 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 social right to make those things manifest in the world. Well, how does that relate to role playing games and and the ability to have WoTC basically tell you that your material is offensive and we're to get rid of it? Well, that's a real thing, and most companies, or I won't say most, I'll say like 99% of companies have the ability to tell you that what you're doing is casting a bad light on our product and you need to get out of here. Now I bring up the NFL, the National Football League here in United States, and I bring it up because there's a part of this that I think people aren't looking at, and that's the fact that the opposite side of a company being able to tell you that your material is casting our brand in a bad light is a company that actually ignores people's actions and their social behavior and doesn't doesn't do anything about casting it in a bad light as well. As a matter of fact, we're scratching our heads a little bit and going like, Hasbro, you actually allowed a product to be produced using the very thing you're saying in your own contract that you wouldn't do, right? Uh, yeah, 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 yeah. John Rice says it would be one level of insanity if I believed that I was a dolphin. It would be, yeah. It would be a second level of insanity if I demanded that everyone else believe that I was a dolphin and condemn them if they didn't. And that's that's the issue, right? But here's the other thing. People one thing people fail to realize is that, or not realize, I apologize, I'm using the wrong word. Embrace is that it's very easy for people to embrace things that they believe in, that they understand, that that makes their worldview better. What people fail to have, and it fail to do, is to stand up for things that you don't like. And freedom means standing up for those things. And just because you don't like the way someone looks or dresses or acts or the way they believe, um, doesn't mean it's wrong. It just means that you don't like. Now again, the issue is making other people believe it or not believe it. Now, from my point of view, and I understand people aren't going to like this, when I hear people complain about, um, oh, it's an agenda for inclusion, it's an agenda for diversity, they're forcing it down my throat, I can't stand it. What I hear, not what people are saying, but what I hear many times is that people who don't know me and often try to, they'll say this when they know me, but they won't say it when they don't. And they'll say, well, um, I don't like diversity being forced down my throat, but I don't mean you, right? And what I hear is people are uncomfortable with people who don't look or act like them around them, and I don't want to see that around me. And most people are more comfortable with the social network that they're around, the people they see, people that look like them, act like them, sound like them. Maybe they are politically like them. Maybe they are, um, like they have a tribal understanding with the people around them. And unfortunately, what ends up happening is when someone says, well, there's an agenda of inclusion, what they don't understand is that for me and my people and my family and the people I was around, there's always been an agenda. The agenda was the opposite way. The agenda was to keep people like me out. Um, and it's unfortunately it's unconscious, right? It's not that I'm blaming people. I'm saying that if you are Caucasian in the United States, people tend to be more comfortable around people who look and act and sound like themselves. And that's just a normal, that's across the board. That's not a particular thing. But if you're the majority, you're going to feel more comfortable around the majority. But Death Angel says, I would defend anyone's right to say something. I just missed another comment. Sorry about that. Say something I fully disagree with, but nobody can force me to think or act in a way I disagree with. Exactly, exactly. And the the thing is, what's force, right? What is the contention of force? I still remember the controversy when Paizo, back in first edition Paizo, when they put out a statement saying that, we're going to have more inclusive art and wording in our books and things. And you talk about the racist comments that came out. No one seems to remember this, about the racist comments that came out and like, oh, I can't believe they're going to do this now. The iconic image of the black woman that's the paladin with the cornrowed braids in her hair is like iconic now, right? But at the time, I mean, and you can go on and on with this. There's been people every time it feels like someone, and unfortunately, what ends up happening and what's happening today is some. If there's a difference between wanting to do the right thing and using it as a badge of honor. And it's not really that people are trying to do the right thing. What they're trying to do is they're trying what's known as virtue signaling, right? They are. It's not what they're doing; it's how they're doing it. And there's a lot of people who, in all facets of life, try to use things to increase their social clout. And no matter what side of a opinion or agenda or motivation or um aspect of whether it's real life or gaming, people will use that. Like it's like the person who constantly talks about the diet they're on, or the person who talks about, I don't know, how much volunteerism that they do, or the person that talks about how, how often they go on hikes around the world or something like that. Like we know that there are people who like to name drop. There's all that kind of stuff. And is forcing, is artwork in a book something being forced? I don't know. I don't know. The problem I see with it is I don't have a problem, and never have had a problem with inclusion and diversity, and especially in the gaming community. I have a whole bookshelf. You guys saw me bring out stacks and stacks of books, and that's just a small part of the books I have in the back, in my man cave. And you'd be pretty hard pressed to find 2% of my books having any images in there that even remotely look like me. And when I say me, just uh, African American, Asian, any people of color, you'll be pretty hard pressed to find books in there that even reference it. And while that may not seem like, I'll get to you co-host in a minute. While that may not seem like a big deal to people who see themselves in things, it's a pretty big deal when myself and my family and my cousins and my nieces and my grandparents and all that kind of stuff have lived in an era where there's always been an agenda to keep us out. I don't know if I've said this to you guys before, but I've been 30 years on my job, and I've been called the N word plenty of times, um, literally in official documents, which it's like someone had a complaint and they called me all kinds of names up and down, and the person put the complaint in and didn't. We'll get to the gaming part because I'll show you what I mean. So, and put the complaint in, and no one read the complaint. They just gave it to my bosses, and they had to pull me in the office. And when my boss was starting to read through it, she was like, "Oh shit!" Her face turned red, and she was just like, "Oh my god!" And there's this idea that by default, in books, in novels, movies, television shows, there's a default ism that someone's Caucasian unless otherwise mentioned. And WoTC is going to react to a public, and unfortunately, the provision that they have, which I actually disagree with, so to be honest with you, um, yeah, yeah, that's Angel. Yeah, it's the idea that, well, if the public doesn't like it, emotions, right? That we have the ability to physically manifest that in the world by canceling you, kicking you out the contract, and having your material destroyed, deleted, destroyed, whatever. And without a third party mediator, without the ability to say, hey, my material isn't offensive or hateful or whatever, I think is wrong. Now I'm going to get to co-hosts here who are making some comments, and I'll explain why context really, really matters. I mean, really matters. All right, so Ike says, I understand a company wanting to control their public image via association. Sorry, uh, uh, their public image via association with questionable material. However, Wizards of the Coast just published racist material, so there's zero judge of proper. And that's my point. That's exactly my point. Like all the rest of us were not doing those things. We already know it's offensive, and we're already policing ourselves. If someone puts out material that is low quality, hateful, terrible, whatever, we are so social in our ability in the gaming community to say something is warranted or not, that we've already been policing it because we policed WotC to let them know that the material they put in it was terrible, right? Um, I think that's Angel. Did I say that? Yeah, yeah, yeah. Hell, I should just pin I should just pin that shit right. Yeah. Mike also says this also sounds like one more catch-all within 1.2 that allows them to cut off uh third party creators. I agree with that. All they need is to take the wrong view of an appearance, perception, or take on material, and then cry out, what about the children, like some South Park parent, and claim the moral high ground, all with the intent of cutting off third party publishers. And to talk about virtue signaling, they've actually, when you read the language, that's exactly what they're doing, right? They're going, well, you can't hate this provision because we're trying to protect the kids and the families and stuff, right? And the problem is, let me give you a real, honest to goodness situation that I see could happen nearly immediately with this new, if someone were to sign this 1.2 or 1.3 after the draft is edited, whatever. So we in the gaming community have things known as bad guys, monsters, NPCs, right? And a lot of those bad guys do bad things. Well, if I write in my book what the bad guys do, torture, slavery, um, murder and slaying of flesh and devouring of memories and um, digging into people's nightmares and lot, right? Stealing the with the Pied Piper story, stealing the children away and all. Okay, my intention isn't to harm someone. Maybe my intention is to put assholes in my game for other people to punch them in the throat, right? I go back to catharsis, where there's a reason why there are devils and demons in role playing games, and the vast majority of the reasons for that were to beat their asses. Now, are there emo goths out there, or maybe armchair sociopaths that are like I want to be a tiefling and I want to have demon ears and I want to come from the plains of hell and I want to be a demon. It's a yes, that exists in the game, which is why people want to play, evil drow elves and tieflings and orcs and all this kind of stuff. Um, yeah, and yeah, sorry about that, Death Angel Shadow. Damn, you stole the words virtual signaling by my fingers. Yeah. Um, um, Death Angel says, to me, it seems like the ones pushing this virtual signaling stuff the most are the ones who feel guilty. I agree with that. Guilt is a feeling. I don't feel guilty. I game with anyone who's down to play. Exactly. And unfortunately, as I did mention, and I mean this across the board, in today's world, people want their feelings made manifest in the real world. Instead of feeling their feelings, putting that aside, and then manifesting themselves in the real world. So there are people who, for example, there was a when I hate to go back to politics, but one side was like tearing down all the Southern monuments, and everyone was up in arms, like you shouldn't destroy history. That's terrible. Now the opposite side is out there trying to sanitize the quite horrible history of the United States of slavery. Right? People feel guilty, and then they want to they have an inability to deal with their own guilt. And listen, I'm as one individual, I don't want people to feel guilty. Just stop. Here's an idea. Let's just not do that again. That's all. Just how about we just be friends? How about we just treat people like human beings? You don't have to apologize for every evil fuck in the past. That's not your job. You're if you feel guilty about your ancestors doing some effed up bullshit, that's not your job is not to apologize for your job is to lead your life and be a good person and treat other people fairly and stuff. That's all. It's just you. Your responsibility is you. Your responsibility is not to worry about to now it's also not to apologize, and maybe we might want to fix broken things, but yeah, you're today there are people who are like trying to blame other people for the antics of people 5 generations ago, and it's like no. Let's live today. Right? And people's guilt and people's anger, extremism never works, and it doesn't matter what extreme it is. Yep. Yeah. That's real. Blame Canada. Now, Archives and Ethics said, that said, inclusion has, I don't know if this, because I'll post this up in just a minute, because I'm pretty sure it's not going to, yeah. It won't show all the way. That said, inclusion has a lot of benefits for a system beyond even just making some sorts of folks more comfortable. Exactly. Though that is obviously the main aim. If your system has a reputation for inclusion, bigots are less likely to gravitate towards your game and tarnish your image. Nobody wants to, by happenstance or otherwise, get the reputation as the game that that crowd hangs out in. And that's the real thing, right? Like, AON says, mention, it brings up the point that, listen, you you don't really want your brand, whether your game or your supplement or whatever, is the place where people who are hateful hang out at, right? That, because that's often what happens with unmoderated social platforms, right? Like an unmoderated social platform, everyone's like, "Oh, well, that's a great idea," and then and then what happens? Human beings, and for some reason, human beings love pushing the envelope. Someone will go, "Well, there's no rule against that," and so there's always someone who ruins it for everybody else, and um, that's unfortunate. Deadman says the default in written books is to make all characters your own race, if not specific, if no specific race is given. I would agree with you. And okay, here's another. Let me give you this example, a real world example of the issue with orcs, right? So, and context matters. So in the past, we know as a fact that monstrous beings, beast people, orcs, and things, uh, Lovecraftian era, the Age of Exploration era, that people who were not, I don't know, quasi European around the world were seen as the savage people. And they were in fantasy works and books, that's how they were written. And they were the mysterious bestial other that needed to be civilized. And the outgrowth of that in many of the books and paraphernalia at that time, that's where those people came from. That's the real origin of them. Today's context is most young people have not only not read that material, but they have no relationship to that. When they're playing a role-playing game, they don't see any relationship at all. There is no social construct between an orc and someone who's uh, Latino, an orc and someone from Madagascar, orc is someone from India or Bali or Chile or Thailand, right? They don't they don't associate the two. The origin of the thing, pretty horrible. You know, in my opinion, F Lovecraft, right? HP can go suck one, right? But do I love the game and the things that were created from it? Yes, because I'm a grown human being with mature outlooks, and I can go, that's kind of effed up. But this other part I really like, and we can make a difference about that. Which is why when people make complaints about uh, uh, racially insensitive material and uninclusive material and stuff, I'm going, and again, me using common sense, I go, well, do we have an example of this? And Ca- Lovecraftian material is an example of this being used as we speak, right? We literally had a television show called Lovecraft Country, and it dealt with racial inequity, and it was a television show, and it brought up the idea that a lot of that Miskatonic University and Lovecraft era stuff like that, it was pretty kind of effed up. It was in a racially uh wild era, right? And even the people making stuff for like all the Call of Cthulhu and Trail of Cthulhu stuff even mentions in their own materials. You're like, hey, listen, we know the origins of this crap is problematic. How about we remove that part, take the part we like, and let's have some fun. And much like Deadman says, that unless specified, there really is no specific real world racial bias. But you can't say, I will say, you guys, every time um, a new medium comes out, like what was it? Most recently, The Last of Us. People complaining about Joel's daughter being mixed and stuff. I'm just like, really? Are we still those children? All right, getting back into and Hasbro doesn't want that controversy at all. That's exactly why they did it. They don't even want to have the conversation. They just don't want to have that controversy. My problem is, what is controversy today? Is it a bunch of people whose emotions get upset and they get on social media and they make they want to demand some sort of retribution or correction for their own anger or guilt or frustration, and then WotC knee jerk reactions goes, yeah, we're not playing the long game in this, and this is going viral, which we know these things that go viral disappear very quickly, and then they ruin someone's worldview. I mean, and not just their worldview, but their livelihood. I mean, and delete their books and kick them out of the RPG community for doing so because a bunch of people had got upset over a weekend, right? Um, John Wright mentions, okay, so says, were movies like Spartacus and Star Wars Anglophobic because they had antagonists have a British accent and the protagonists have an American accent? Yeah, yeah, I would agree with that. It's kind of effed up. It is. Um, I think they erroneously, and this is kind of an effed up thing too. Here in the states, like there's an erroneous association with Britishisms and uh, the we're greater than thou. What was the um, there's no place in the world where the sun doesn't set on a British Empire kind of thing, and that's really what it's about, right? It's pulling those threads on, like, we need an evil person. What's the easiest shorthand for an evil person? I got it. Give him a Brit. Well, it used to be German, but now we just do a general Euro trash accent, some vaguely European accent, kind of from somewhere is a thing. It's unfortunate, but yeah, I agree with that. I agree with that statement. Just Angel Shadow says, when I'm playing a game, the last thing I want to play is an old fat white guy. I already know what that's like. Hey, listen, except for the skin tone, I'm not too far off from you, man. Right? But here's something that I don't understand is, wow, you guys got way ahead of me. All right, is the idea that why are people concerned with policing other people's imaginations? So, um, there's there are, like Dead Man's talking about Tannis half elven, uh, is simply fair skinned redhead with almond shaped eyes. No mention of in real life race. Yet there are, yes, but I would contend that there is a when someone says fair skin or swarthy or dark of nature in their books, I think you could contend that for there's a everyone has a different opinion about what that means. And I agree with you. There's no in real world race, and we all actually know that race doesn't actually isn't really a thing in even in the real world. So yeah. Um, yeah, Michael says, funny that certain aspects are what Wasi intended to hold as triggers for censorship, yet their Nyogi are slavers, their mind flayers torture and inflict body horrors, etc. And that's my point, right? Like the Drow elves are known to be slavers. Okay. It's the context that it's in. The book isn't going, hey guys, we think slavery is okay. It's actually the opposite, right? It's why in a movie or TV show or a book or something, you have your bad guy do bad things, and then your heroes go to stop them. It's in the movie John Wick. They are not promoting puppy horror, right? The movie is not promoting injury to small animals, domesticated animals. It's promoting this is a bad thing. And when you see this, it'll pretty much rationalize putting bullets in the heads of all the people in the rest of the movie, right? Right. Um, Michael says, let's dig into the orc issue. I see orcs as vilified indigenous peoples. Read the original AD&D and 2E materials in Dragon, the story of Groomsh and the choosing of lands by the gods. Did it show up? I, I, where's the rest of? Oh, okay. I don't see the rest of it. Yes, um, in AD&D's own history, they actually talk about the orc issue and being embarrassed, not being kind of like cast off and embarrassed by the elves who were like arrogant and things like that. Yeah, it's 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 in their own material, right? Which is my thing. Like it's in your own material. How you tell other people what to do when it's in your own material? And my thing is, if someone has problematic material, send it to an arbitrator, right? Why can't we have a third party arbitrator decide what happens as opposed to yeah, we're done with you, we don't want to deal with the controversy, we're not even going to, we're done with you. And I brought up the NFL because there's some pretty problematic behaviors we've seen in professional sports players and they don't do anything about it, but let one person do something that other people don't like, aka Neil, and it's just like everyone gets in an uproar and I'm like, you do realize you have like, veritable racists and I'm rapists. I didn't mean that. Rapists on like sporting teams that people are like, what's your point, right? Like, who are you? Who wants? Nobody wants to be the morality police because what happens if you're overly police? If you overly police or under police, and yeah, it's or what if something you produced for 5 years has been perfectly fine, and then society changes, and now it's no good, right? So that's the kind of thing. I'll catch up to you guys in a bit. Wayne says, if having this discussion is important to you, you're probably less than open minded. If you treat people just based solely on merit and quality, you're never going to have this. You're never going to have this equitable outcome. I'm trying to see what you mean by that. Discussion is important. Discussion is. Do you? Uh, are you saying like me, like us having this discussion, or do you mean general, like the gaming community, Wayne? Because I think, do you have? Oh, okay, okay, okay. So let me see if I can, because I think you have a follow up comment on this. Um, open open change to society as it happens naturally is great, and it is what we're for. Forced to change is still tyranny and increases the chance of a bad outcome. Yeah, yeah, yes, 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 yes. But I guess some would say, what is tyrannical? Now, do I think the 1.2 OGL is tyrannical? Yeah, yeah, yeah. I agree with that. But let's be honest. The only reason people go for things or don't go for things is because they agree or don't agree with them, right? My contention is that if this was something people, if you agreed with this, you wouldn't think it was tyrannical. Is my point, right? It's the whether I'm for or against something, I'm always for the rule that allows the thing to happen or not happen. So, do I think Hasbro or WotC's intention is to just wholeheartedly cancel things they just don't particularly like? No, I think that provision is in there because, like any smart corporation, you want the ability to not have things affect your bottom line. I think they exist in a world where emotional outbursts can affect your bottom line, and they want the ability to jump the hell up on it. And so I think corporations have always had morality clauses. This has always been true. It's why, and I'm going to say something kind of effed up here. It's why, you know um the porn industry doesn't have like doesn't have sponsorships, right? Of big notable companies. They don't want that stuff associated with their product. You can't. They don't want that, and there's a reason for that. And my thing is, it doesn't matter what it is. No one should be the morality police, but you need to have guardrails, because you can't. The minute you just say, "Well, I don't plan on breaking any rules," that's fine for you. But let's be honest. As human beings, there are always people who are pushing the edge, all the time. Always people doing that. You just can't even get around it. Um, mm, let's see. John Wright says, "I hate to say it, but Robert E. Howard, a major influence of Gary Gygax, is pretty guilty of stereotyping non-European peoples." Yeah, but yep, I still love Cole and Conan books, though. Me too. Me too. And yeah, what Conan was basically a rewritten version of Conan, running around the world, going to like Greece and India and Africa and stuff, and Far East Asia. That's what the Conan books were. I mean, the countries in the Conan books were very, very thinly veiled versions of those things, and those people were precast in pretty terrible lights. But do I like Conan? Yeah, right. So the point is that we're human beings with we're far more smarter than we think we are, you know. And there's a lady on my route that like gives me the guilt thing all the time, and I'm just like, lady, she's white, and I'm just like, you calm down. You don't need to be overly apologetic every time you like see me or something because something happened in the news or whatever. Like, relax, relax. You didn't do anything. You're just a regular person. Thank you, but relax. Oh man. Death Angel Savage says, "I'm not going to defend Lovecraft, but personally, I don't see any link between orcs and any human race." See, and that's the point, right? Like your context of that is like, I'm a modern, intelligent human being. I don't see a link there, and it's all about context. At one point, there was. We just as a modern society don't make those links any longer. Um, I see your comment there. Um, where it is? Did it should give it? My chat just shifted way up. Let's see. Orc Wayne says orcs don't have any link to human-like race. Mythologically, they're demons, evil spirits. So we're elves, by the way. Yep, elves and things. And it brings up like what is bioessentialism and things like that. Yeah. Like Death Angel Shadow says, humans are humans. We come in different shades, but we're all the same. And see, what happened in role playing games, as we all know, is that when orcs, drow, bugbears, goblins, kobolds, dragonborn became things that we wanted to play as characters and embody them, you can't put the genie back in the bottle, right? Like you can't say, "Well, I want to play Dragonborn, but orcs are all evil," right? Because, well, it's kind of defeating the point. It's you've already made them complex and complex societies in and amongst themselves. So why don't we like just apply the same rules to say orcs that we would apply to any monstrous race that people want to play, right? Wayne says, "Why are people concerned with policing other people?" Exactly. Yep, yep. Because George Carlin was right on right on stupidity. Carlin rocks. Yeah, that's my point about people being concerned about other people's genitalia. It's like unless it has a direct impact on you and your relationship with this person, why do you care? Like, why do you why even be bothered with caring about why someone even decides to be or not be what they are, unless it has a direct impact on, I don't know, maybe your romantic relationship with them or your ability to conceive a family with them. Maybe that's important. Other than that, if I want a hamburger at a restaurant, I could care less what your genitalia is, right? And in role playing games, like why do we care about what somebody else wants to play, right? Let me let's say generally, if you're discussing race, is because somehow differences in race are important to you. Oh, okay, yeah, yeah. Well, I'm discussing it because it's important to the community. I normally don't bother discussing it, but this has, as I mentioned earlier, this actually has financial and legal repercussions, right? If they put if they put a morality clause in a contract and they make you sign it, then you are now beholden to that morality clause. And the problem with it is the problem with morality clauses, like Death's Angel Shadow is saying, is that not only do you not know how they're going to implement it, you don't know when. And my issue would be when. It wouldn't be because it's there. It's because it's there and it could be a threat to any number of things. Because we can decide today what we think is right and wrong, but as we know as a society, things start to shift. And we've seen people canceled because of a an errant tweet or social media post that they did 10 years ago, right? Death Angel Shadow says it's a cudgel for them to wield whenever it's in their best interest. Exactly. Not because they agree or disagree with it. Exactly. They don't have to. A corporation doesn't need to be have morals because they normally don't have morals. They are interested in making money. If something happens in society that causes them not to make money, they are going to fix that issue. And that issue could be any number of things. It's the worrying about straws but not worrying about the plastic cup that the straw goes into, right? It's and I default to I default to things that we already do or have done or plan on doing in the future. And I'm like, no, this kind of doesn't fit, right? I think what would be better is if they wanted to have a morality clause would be to have a third party involved in it. But I contend that the 1.0A already has a morality clause because if you not only that, but you're also not allowed to use um, Dungeons and Dragons IP. So really, the morality clause doesn't actually have anything to do with them, um, because there have already been books put out. What is it? The Book of Erotic Fantasy or something like that. And while it uses the same mechanics, it's not a Dungeons. It is not under the brand of Dungeons and Dragons, right? Anything that third party content creators create isn't under the Dungeons and Dragons brand because you're not allowed to use the brand. So it's really weird that way. It's really weird. Wayne says, I call it low level for racism. What you look like shouldn't matter to anyone, only your qualities. Well, that's true, but that's not really how people. Yes, but that's not should and shouldn't, or what people will or won't do are two separate things, right? Um, People who don't know me have often the number of times the cops were called on me when I'm carrying mail is unbelievable, right? Like I know, so I deliver mail in Columbus, Ohio, and in the zip code I deliver in, there's a little small, very highly affluent area called Bexley, and me having 30 years in the postal service, I have like, well, the second highest seniority in my station. I got one of the best routes. So I deliver that route. And that route is, they're all $1 million homes and all kind of stuff, right? And when I first got the route, it's like you would have thought, had the police brought me like coffee and donuts, you would have thought that they were on my payroll the number of times I saw them because the cops were being called because they wanted to know who this dude was, despite being in a postal vehicle, in a postal uniform with a postal ID, delivering the post. What was I doing? Now, the cops knew, well, except for one cop who was just like, did you see something suspicious around here? And his partner was just like, dude, you know why we're here, right? Just, never mind the fact that I actually have the direct number to the Bexley Police Department for the sole purpose of calling them, which I've used to protect their own neighborhood. But despite human beings don't do things rationally. They do things through emotion. It only takes a few people to do it that way, right? It's like the people who burn couches and flip over cars when their sporting team wins or loses. You know, it's the same thing. It's just it only takes a few people to, you know, to ruin it for everyone, and then you get a mob mentality, and people don't want to be left out. So, um, Archive says on Wayne's point, I am someone in disagreement on a point. Okay, change doesn't just happen naturally. Confrontation and controversy is the means by which social change happens, and that isn't really tyranny. I do agree with that. That it's the only difference is whether you agree with the confrontation and controversy, right? Anyway, he continues to say, even if it's uncomfortable for many, it's just complicated navigating that which makes these topics somewhat fraught. And listen, we aren't done as a society. We all know that we aren't done, which means again, I go to history and what we've done before is that today there's a term that's called we're all heroes in our own story, right? We're all the hero of our own story. The second part of that no one really focuses on is that we're the villain in everybody else's. And so no matter how right you think you are, you're wrong in someone else's eyes. It doesn't matter what I think in my righteousness. There are people who will despise my opinion no matter what side of that opinion is. And throughout history, we start to shift and turn on those kind of things. We today, right, like us talking right now, no having this open conversation, we're talking to each other, we're having this thing, and yeah, is it divergent off of role playing games? Sure, but whatever. It's part it's a our role-playing games in many ways is an excellent forum for a microcosm of dealing with terrible and problematic and complicated issues, which we see today that role-playing games are actually being imported into schools and into uh, professional psychological places to help people deal with certain issues, right? It's a good thing. And the fact that maybe someone can't come to a proper decision, or it hurts their head, or that to think that no matter how right you think you are, you're wrong in a huge population of other people. Listen, I'm a bad guy in someone else's world today and in the future. That's just that's just life. That's just the way it is, right? Um, so yeah, Death Shadow Angel says, yeah, they really opened Pandora's box by allowing PCs to be monstrous. Yeah, it's like, okay, so the point is, if you're going to allow Dragonborn and Drow and kobolds and goblin people to play them, then it behooves us to make them real people in the world, right? Is this just snowflakeism? Like, well, my character's different, but the rest of them are just bad. you know, Your own words are to be believed. Yeah. Ian, yeah, Ian Wright says people just need to feel they have more control over the world than they do, and shout so loud on social media because they don't feel heard. Um, eh, I agree with that a lot more than a little bit. Right? It's it's like being in a sporting stadium. If you ever guys ever go into a big sporting event and you've got the camera that focuses in on people in the crowd, and imagine trying to be heard in a stadium of 50,000, 75,000, 100,000. You can't be heard. But when the camera moves around, the camera focuses on the people that are the more outrageous, the louder, the more boisterous, the crazy ones, right? In order to get people's attention, the more wild you are, the greater attention that you get. So that's why, people flip cars and, burn couches. That used to be a big thing here in Ohio. I don't know why, but burning couches. I don't know if that's about, but yeah, that's why sometimes people get a little bit more outrageous than they need to be. Deadman says D&D allowed monstrous PC characters in second edition under TSR. They even had a campaign setting that included playing as dragons called the Council of Worms, and of course, remember half orcs. Let's not forget that half orcs back in the day we knew where they came from, right? That was it was. Let's be honest, it was sexual assault. It, the original half orcs, yeah, yeah. Now in today's world, we don't want to kink shame. There's a lot of people who find orcs to be pretty. They're like, I don't hate them. I kind of feel excited to be around orcs. Right? There's people about that. You know, um, Archive and Ethics says agree on that. Corporations aren't really the correct arbiters of our social debates. Yep, yep. I can't see the morality clause ending up being used in any way that isn't ham-fisted and tone deaf. Let's see if we can highlight the ham-fisted and tone. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I agree with you. I agree with that because there isn't. There really. Not only will they not want to, just the implementation of it is just going to. The point of the implementation isn't to solve a social issue. The implementation is to prevent money loss and to increase gains, right? So they're not going to use it like a scalpel. They're going to use it like a hammer, you know. Death Angel says we really need to prune the player races back to a core set: elves, dwarves, halflings, gnomes, humans, and maybe half orcs. Maybe I'm with you. I think having like 35 different player races and all that kind of it bothers me. Not because the different choices don't bother me. It's that there's so many of the choices. It kind of makes me it pulls me out of the reality of it. You know what I mean? But oh man. Oh man. Oh yes. I was afraid to ask where in Ohio. I worked in Software Center, the Center City Mall back in the 92. Oh really? That- Really? Okay. All right. Okay. Okay. Now I wasn't born and raised here. I was born and raised in Philadelphia. Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Yes, Philadelphia, born and raised in the, yeah, I know. I'm not going to say the song because they'll ding me on that. But yeah, yeah. Uh, Now, Mike brings up a good point because this has actually been solved, and I brought this up before, saying that Mike disagrees with Death Angels entirely. We don't need to pare down ancestral choice; we need to expand ancestral cultures, and um, I feel like they've already fixed that. Um, I it's like it's weird, like the fact that they had race and sub race, and then they could easily like okay, so um there's a book out called Ancestral DM not the DM's Guild, DM's Guild and Drive Through RPG. It's a like platinum winner, Ancestral Heritages, level up 5th edition from N World, which I was part of. I didn't help write this part, but they already separated. It's called uh not legacy, lineage and culture. In There's a book called Dead Man's Guide to Dragon Grin. They did the same thing. They have, I think it's called biology, heritage. Maybe it's called heritage and culture, whatever. Anyway, it's pretty damn easy to do it. And yeah, Dead Man. WoTC didn't fix it. The community fixed it. Yeah. Okay, so they have race and subrace. Change the wording and call it and find a thesaurus. All right, here we go. Let me go find a thesaurus right now. Let's type in um race the thesaurus. Hmm. Let's go. Human race. Uh. Okay. Let's see. Human species, humanity, man, morality, people, biology, heritage, um, society, humankind. Uh, what's another one? It's still working. And let me. No, no ads, no pop-ups. What else is there? That we've used legacy, we've used bloodline. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, like Mike's bringing up. Yeah, I'm not referring to race or subrace thing. I'm referring to cultures in which multiple ancestries live and work in one cultural context or another. Well, that's what I mean, right? Like, um, the point is, let's say I'm going to make up a generalized culture. A culture could be considered industrial. A culture could be considered militant, or a culture could be considered, I don't know, cosmopolitan or naturalistic. Or I'm using very vague terms. That could be a culture. Nomadic. That could be a culture. But your what some people would call bioessentialism. Your biology could be very different in a fantasy setting, right? The biology of some creatures are very tall and big. Some are very small and quick. Some are have the ability, I don't know, to turn themselves into an ooze, or turn invisible, or see in the dark, or uh, eat things that shouldn't be edible, or whatever, right? Um, it's all that kind of stuff, and it's just like it would be pretty easy to separate culture from the biological capabilities of a winged people versus an aquatic people, right? Like Wayne says, I never allowed half orcs in my games for those very reasons you just stated, DPJ. Yeah, they have a problematic origin. When I first started playing Dungeons and Dragons, I told my friends, I was like, aren't we all the elephant in the room? Like, where do half orcs come from? um, oh, Desert Eagles been in Tennessee for 3. Yeah, yeah, I love, and I've been happily all over the Midwest. I love it. They, somebody's moved all around the country. Kind of love it. It's so cool too to see different parts of the United States, and I love comparing it. It you not used to be, because I do this so early in the morning. It's later in the day in for across the pond, and so it's really cool to see people come in. I'm getting to the end of this because my I think we all can agree that the morality clause in just about any contract kind of sucks. Now, listen, if I was an NFL player and I'm getting paid tens, maybe even hundreds of millions of dollars, would I sign that morality clause? I probably would, even though they could fire me in an instant. Now, in practice, do they do that? No, no, they don't. And I think I think these two things are both true at the same time. Do I think Hasbro or WotC will heavy-handedly use the morality clause to start shutting down third-party content creators? Honestly, I don't think they're going to do that. I don't. I actually think they don't care about what you produce. What they care about is making money, and if what you're doing is affecting that, then they're going to use that like a hammer. So, on the other hand, I would never sign it. I would never sign it. I correcting people's opinions of me and mine, if that was my if I had that agenda, I would not want to put that in the hands of some corporation to be the morality police, right? If I want to change people's perceptions of things, the easiest way I can do that is just to be me. Um, I got to start with me because, like I said earlier, I'm the hero in my own story, but I'm also the villain in everyone else's. And in order to convince people I'm not the villain, I have to change. I have to display my behavior in such a way that I'm not villainous. And some people's default of me is villainous, simply by just because of the way I look. They don't know me. They've been told this. They may not even had any particular interaction with people who even look like me, but they've been told, maybe by friends, family, growing up, social media, whatever. And so, but do I trust a corporation to do that for me? Nah, that's no, 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 no. It's pretty no. Um, yeah, yeah. I see you guys. Mm-mm-mm. Uh, My wife played a half orc in one campaign. That was her first time playing something other than a gnome rogue. Okay, I finally convinced her to play a caster class, so she played dwarven cleric. Dwarves and gnomes. Eh, Gnomes are they need some help. I think they I think they seriously need some help. They're kind of like they're like a nothing race. I can't explain it, man. I like gnomes, but let's be honest, they really don't have a culture of their own, really. Not even halflings, really. They're all snowflake. These races are all snowflake races. Like except for Tolkien. I mean, are there really any nations of halflings out there? Eberron tried to do it, but I don't know. It just I always find I like them, but I just find it problematic. I'm always like, really? The main problem WotC have in 5e is their bare bones settings don't give a chance for different expressions of races in Dark Sun's different versions of races. I.e., Dark Sun's different version. Yeah, I definitely agree. I can't. This new playtest with the races, I was like, why would you 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 doubled down on something that didn't need to be doubled down on? They're just like, well, the gods made them that way, and I'm like, that's even worse. That's even worse. Anyway, Ian goes on to say, it's okay to have evil orcs as long as it doesn't seem like you are saying all settings have to have the same thing. Well, and also it takes I know people get in arms about this kind of thing with the evil orcs and stuff like that, and their association with racist content and whatnot, which is all true. All it takes is to go all you need to do is answer the reason why. So for example, you don't need to say all orcs are evil, and you don't need to say all orcs are good. You can say, well, it's just like human beings. We already have an example of this. Human beings are not all good or evil. They have small influences. There are big influences. We live in different places. We have elemental influences by like setting, landscape, weather, those kind of things. We have social influences with political maneuverings and boundaries and borders and war and we have starvation and pestilence and whatnot. More so than a little bit in the past couple years. We've had well, hell, we've had much more than that in the past as well. So we have things that affect people. So you could have some evil orcs. And why are they that way? What is their origin? What influences have they had? Were they mistreated in the past and now they are barbaric today? Are there different tribes of orcs if you want to make them nomadic or air quote savage or something like that? Is this just a misrepresentation of the crusading paladins that are out there and they never were that way, right? Like all you have to do is just go, well, why? I hear you. Yeah, like at least they're not monsters like they were in fourth edition. Well, honestly, they were monsters back in when AD&D first Monster Manual came out. Um, but they actually had elves and dwarves in there as well as monsters. So, yep, there is that. There is that. Uh, yeah, Dark Sun had tribes. Yep, they sure did. Dark Sun had tribes of cannibal halflings, and they had who were the ones? I'm mixing two settings together. So Dark Sun had the cannibal halflings, and Eberron had the dinosaur riding halflings, if I'm not mistaken. Like they rode on raptors or something. Why do I think Dark Sun had the same thing? I don't know. But going back to what you said before, it's like, yeah, what don't don't make the why in the world would WotC make the races that they had, which they changed the species? I apologize. Change the species. Why would they cement them into? They're like, well, we're going to make the dwarfiest dwarf, and I'm like, no, don't do that. All you have to do is just put some options down, right? Like, how do you know my world has dwarves that all live underground and have tremor sense? That's what? Maybe in my world they're all I don't know uh, politicians and jewelers, and they all live above ground or something. And whatever, right? Like, ah, all you have to do is just make a random list and just pick one. I don't understand how hard it is to make random tables. Here are six options for your dwarves. Here are eight options for your elves. It, ridiculous. I don't know. Yeah, yeah. Death Angel says my biggest issue with 5e was that Faerun was the default setting. Sure was. Um, Faerun's races were not the same as the generic Greyhawk races back in 3 and 3.5, and they were even, yeah. Elves in FRCS Forgotten Realms were different than those in the generic 3 and 3.5 era. There were elaborate explanations for those sub races. Same with dwarves, gnomes, and other non-human races, which is another thing. Strange thing. They already own the information. I wonder why they just didn't bring it back. I'm a monster. I don't remember that video there, Shadow. Okay, archive. I hear you. Boom, boom. Lit the table on fire, right? Yeah, options in D&D. That is Pathfinder talk. Okay, all right, all right. Bring it over here. Because listen, there's a lot of converts. You're going to have to teach a lot of converts there. Archive. DBJ, I need to share some lore from my homebrew world of Thole. That may help give gnomes some value. Yeah, yeah. John Wright says all drow used to be evil, at least until the Drizzt books. So that begs the question: are most members of evil races evil due to nature or nurture? Are they born evil or raised to be evil? Well, the that statement itself, for me, is the great thing about role playing games, right? Maybe we can question it. And here's the thing: like some people were upset that Wizards of the Coast wanted to say that Menzo Baranzan and the evil drow that were there were just a subset of a larger group of people, and that not all of them were evil. And some people got upset at that, and I was like, really? Because that kind of makes a lot more sense than a little bit. Like, listen, we all know that when somebody says the words always, everyone, never, absolutely, when people use words like that, it, my there's something in my brain that goes off. I'm just sitting back like, oh my god, don't do that. Don't. There's almost no situation where those words actually have factual evidence for them, right? So when people say all orcs are, all drow are, all of them, they never. I'm just going, no, no, no. Not only does that not make any sense, it's not even no. You asked this in the Discord. Okay, okay, okay. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Oh, wait, 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 wait. You're so. I'm sorry. I don't want to put your comment out there. I saw you, Wayne. Yeah. I. Yes. Oh man. I know we can get into the how do these races exist everywhere all at once. Mike's like, I personally can't understand how halflings exist. Non dark vision underground species that has no special defense outside of luck, and is the favorite food of bullets, boulets, and ogres. That's a recipe. That's a yeah, recipe for annihilation. Yeah. I like them. I think it's just that unfortunately they can tend to fall into comic relief sometimes, and I'm like, oh, seriously? So Archives is already ongoing. Our traffic is up 300%, and we are already planning server upgrades. Yeah, that's listen. I am not hating that at all. We need to move on from Hasbro. I don't trust them at all. They pulled the gun and put it on the table. I'm done with them. I'm done. When I say I'm done, it's like I love 5e. I love Dungeons and Dragons. I love all the editions previous to that. Even fourth edition, which I didn't particularly like, but I like the fact it exists. Dungeons and Dragons belongs to us. Role playing games belong to us. It's at our table. If you own physical books, you already have it. If you have a PDF on your computer, it's too late. You've already got it. You can't go back now. uh, yeah, like Ian says, I like the lore changes. For Drow, it opens up more options, which is always good for tabletop RPGs. So many stories can be told now. Yeah, I agree with that. And not only do I agree with that, and I'm going to end it here. Um, let's see. I'm going to keep the chat. So, long story short, is this: I absolutely, positively agree with everybody out there that having a morality clause by a corporation is not a good thing at all. It just means they can come down like a hammer. How it's implemented, when will they implement it? It doesn't matter. It's the sword of Damocles, right? It's a big ass weapon held by threads above your head. And whether it's a month, a year, 5 years, 25 years, it doesn't matter. We already know we already know what their intention is, and that's to shut down everybody that is competition and doesn't control and they can't control our narrative. They're a corporation. They want to be able to control the narrative no matter how bad that narrative is. Doesn't mean that they're good at it. It just means that they want to control the narrative. And so in our defense, we just need to move on. And if they want to invite us back, they have the ability to do so. They just will never renege on what that is. At least the current leadership there will never renege on what they really need to do. What they really need to do is define irrevocable back to its original intention, and they'll never do that. Yeah, like Death Angel's shadow. That's yeah. Funny says, or apparently 23 years, as they've demonstrated recently. Yeah, do you really want to have a successful corporation of your own, like MCDM and Paizo and Cobalt Press and Legendary Games and so on and so on? I mean, do you Pelgrane, Mongoose, um, uh, all these people out there, man? Like, do you really want that to be the arbiter of other people's careers and then come to find out that this corporation is going to go, yeah, remember that successful company you built, we're going to go and try to destroy it and start to chip away at the foundation of your corporation. Yeah, yeah, like Wayne says, like blanket statements are never true. Something I tell people all the time. There's usually an exception to damn near everything. And the thing is, that exception may not even exist today. It may have existed once in the past. It may take 50 years for it to exist in the future. But at a certain point, like I said, we're all heroes to ourselves, but we're villains to somebody else. The life that we live today might seem barbaric sometime in the future. They may look at the social changes that we're having today and in the future go, wow, that was a problem then? Really? You know what I mean? And I'm going to end it with this. There was something that my mom used to tell me, and she called it the 1-5-10 rule, or I named it the 1-5-10 because it's the way she said it to me. And whenever I was a kid and I'd fold my arms and you always see me funny with that, with the fold the arms and pout and poke the bottom lip out. I'm not doing the thing, right? I'd be in my head and I'm dumb and I'm a kid and I'm immature. And she would say to me as I got older, she would say, well, what does that matter in a year from now, in 5 years from now, in 10 years from now? What what about that thing that's got you so upset now is really going to affect your life a year from now? And I base a lot of what I do and how I think on that. Meaning, like, I could be upset about other people's lifestyle, but does that really affect my life at all? A year from now, 5 years from now? I mean, really affect it. I mean, my grandfather used to say, well, what does that have to do with taxes? Right. And that came from another quote that I can't remember. What, yeah, but the point is that people get all up in arms about things, but it's like, yeah, but how is that really affecting your life? Like, are you going to earn more money with that? Are you going to lose money with that? If you can make the equation that the thing you're so upset about today is going yeah yeah 1 5 10 rule, like really a year from now you do and I mean I'm talking like seriously, the kids are picking with me in school, blah blah blah. She's just like, listen, next year they're probably going to fail out of school or be arrested or get killed or whatever. Is this really going to? Are you real? Do you really want to be their friends? Do you really want to associate with them a year from now, 5 years, 10 years from now? Are they really going to be your friends, or are they going to be stuck on the street begging you for money, right? And I'd be sitting there, sitting back on like, oh, ooh, shit, ooh, fuck, yeah, yeah, I guess you're right. And I feel like now going to the 1 5 10 rule, is this WOTC rule going to affect you a year from now, 5 years from now, years from now? A guaranteed it'll affect you, and because it'll always be there. Do I think we? Do I think as a society are we going through a ton of social changes and stuff? Yeah, we are, and should we? Probably. Um, but when it comes to me and my opinions about other people and what they do and all that, I don't really care. I just if you want to sit down and have a conversation and play some games or shit, have a conversation and eat some hamburgers and cheeseburgers or something. I'm down. I'm down. I don't really care what your lifestyle is or your beliefs or your political affiliations and all that other kind of stuff. It'll come and go. It'll leave. But anyway, guys, thank you very much for being part of the show. I appreciate you guys being here for the hour show plus the 20 minutes of me ranting and raving and all that kind of stuff. Thanks for bringing your best to the show, because without that, I'd be the old man screaming at the clouds, you know, all that kind of stuff. Um, we'll talk about it. We'll get in. I really want to not talk about WotC anymore, even though I know that gets all the clicks and views and all that kind of bullshit. But I'd like to get back into like regular old role playing. Oh man, yeah. Thank you very much for that, and thanks, Archive. Yeah, Mrs. Death, and I would be happy to game with you anytime. Yeah, yeah. Listen. I'm down for all that kind of stuff, guys, man. And thank you, Archive, for being the archivist of all things Pathfinder. Right? So and thanks for the invite there, Death's Angel Shadow. I love it. I really wish I could speak it the way I think it. Anyway, guys, Dead Man, everybody out there, Wayne, Mike, damn, Ian, all you guys, thank you very much for being part of the show. For those who happen to see the show, but you can't be here live, I read all the comments. I may not be able to respond very quickly, but I do. Anyway, guys, have a great day. Thank you very much, or great day, great afternoon, great evening. Um, oh man. Uh, thanks, dear dude. Yeah, just call me Death. It's easier. As spoken in the shadows. Well, thank you very much. And yeah, Archive, man, it's like, yeah, do it best. Also, pathfinding community makes the work a joy. Absolutely. So, guys, here's a shout out. Pick up Pathfinder. They literally have all their rules for free, which is a crazy thing. And guess what? They make money and they have a great following. Funny how that works. That's weird. If you put out good product and have a great community, we'll call it on that. Guys, have a great one. I will see you later. Bye.